Evening, guys. Hope everybody's having a great evening. Got big plans for the weekend. Y'all be safe out there this weekend in whatever journeys you may be on. We're going to start our second reading on the regular grays. We'll do a quick recap. The regular grays we know they're a four-way cross. The hen side was a Harrisford brown red, black and tan hen, and is the offspring out of the last Eastland hen that Mr. Eastland sent to O'Connell in 1885. And the cock was a gray claret cock out of that Gilman gray and the Madigan claret. There was that hen, the offspring out of that mating, was bred back to a cock that was 3/4 of the Mansell Pile and 1/4 of the Gilman Gray. So basically, you got a big dose of that Mansell Pile in them, and in the Gilman Gray, with a splash of the Harrisford brown red and a splash of the Eastland red quill. So that's what you're looking at, a four-way cross. Mansell Pile, Gilman Gray, Harrisford brown red, Eastland red quill. Just about an eighth of the Eastland red quill after the final mating, and that's what it said. And they whooped the world with them. We know Frost obtained the fowl from Madigan. We also know that Mr. Mansell obtained the gray fowl from Frost when Frost got out of the business. We also know that Walter Kelso got all of Madigan's fowl at the time of his death. And we'll pick it up right there. One more thing. We also know that there's a brown-red side of those. That's the reason they call them the regular grays, is because half the stags came two colors. They come a typical gray color, and they come a black-gray color. And that's the reason they started calling them regular grays, because they fought the black grays together, they fought the regular grays together, and they both done really, very well. Law was seen was actually in Madigan's cockhouse when he fought the black grays down here against Wilkerson in the Groves Pit there near Orange, Texas, about 90 miles down the road from here. And Wilkerson was a typewriter fame, I believe, Judge Wilkerson. But anyway, we'll pick it up right there. I'm pretty sure that Law blood is the brown red side of that regular gray. But anyway, that's yet to be proven. That is that's not a fact yet. We're going to pick it up right there on the reading. During the past 40 years, I have ransacked the entire world for information, and I know many of the foremost breeders in the world today. And I know of no better bred fowl than those I am now breeding. He's referring to the Madigan fowl. And this is Gus Fristroff talking. I am now breeding the best Madigan bloodlines plus some of the original bloodlines that entered his strands. In other words, he's breeding some of the Duray fowl, O'Connell, Kearney fowl, the fowl that he made these chickens with. When I went to work for Colonel Madigan in 1935, I had won 12 consecutive mains against the leading cocks and cockers of Texas. I was later to feed cocks for Dan Japhet, Mr. Madigan's best friend at Houston, Texas, and Walter Kelso, Mr. Madigan's best friend at Galveston, Texas. Just like I said, the Kelso farm was at Galveston, and I understand it was more like a concentration camp. Kelso didn't want nobody at his place. I understand that he had a electrified hurricane fence with barbed wire across the top of it that ran up close to the ocean there at his place. That's how serious Kelso was about you not taking your tail. He didn't play show and tell. He's kind of like me. Anyway, we'll carry on. I also spent over 3 years feeding for J.M. Frost Jr., a Houston multimillionaire. Mr. Kelso inherited the Clarets at the time of Mr. Madigan's the death of Mr. Madigan, and some went to Mr. Japhet's son Bill. Okay, so Kelso didn't get them all. A few went to Japhet's son, which I guess will be Bill Japhet. We'll carry on. Those gentlemen are of the highest type character, and their cocking abilities is well known. While in their employ, I fought cocks against the leading cockers of the world, such as Colonel Madigan, Henry Wortham, Judge Wilkins, Frank Heeland, Gilbert Curtis, John Berg, I bet you that's where your Blueberg muffs come from, of New York, Ernest Buford of New York, and many of the others too numerous to mention. Okay. So Gus is the authority. He was there during the time all these chickens was made. He actually just kind of followed along with them. His life and their life kind of ran parallel, and which is extraordinary. Well, I mean, can you imagine the memories that he's sharing a little of his memories with us? Can you imagine the things that goes through his mind every day, like goes through ours? Orlando goes through mine every day. Memories pop up from the time I was a child till this present day, at certain times, and memories of events and things and roosters, individual roosters that I've had in the past, and that whole special places with me. And you can imagine in Mr. Fristross' memory what it was like, because he lived this, he's seen it, he was right there in the middle of it. We'll carry on. After seeing Madigan's cocks fight, I realized their greatness, for I had never seen such terrific hitters before. And no matter what physical condition they were in, they were always trying to hit. Bam. Just what I've talked about. And I talked about it the last of the Madigan Claret video. It's in their DNA. Gus realized this. Gus could see this. And what he's saying is, no matter what condition these chickens was in, these chickens are trying to win. They're not hitting because they have to. They're not hitting because they're being pushed by another rooster. And anybody that's ever been to quite a few cockfights in their life know what I'm talking about. There are certain families out there, and I know a lot of you mad at me, you don't like me saying it, but white hackles are notorious for it. That they'll still be able to break down walls when they leave the pit losing, but they'll only fight when they're pushed. And you'll hear people say, "Oh, who's still hitting like a mule? When he hits, he can break bones." Well, he could hit like that every buckle. He could go over there and hit that other cock like that. He don't want to. But that's quitting. That's sulling, what the old times used to call sulling. And I know a lot of people, "Oh, he's blind." Oh, he said, no, he ain't. If he's blind in his right eye, and he got his left eye, the cock coming at him, and he continues to turn his blind side to that rooster, that rooster's quitting. That rooster's only, and then he'll hit. But he's hitting because he's got to, because he's being pushed by the other rooster. Every one of you have seen that that's ever been to a cockfight back in the legal days when we used to fight. He is just as quit as if he was screaming. It's very rare you ever win with fowl like that, the majority. You'll win those quick fights, but when it goes, and they'll look real good early, and they'll still hit like a mule late, and they'll carry their power. But that's what we call, they run out of heart before they run out of bottom. Their bottom is so great, but they have very little heart. But Gus was able to see this in these roosters, that they was trying to continue to kill their opponent all the time, push the fight, and he that was something that he knew was making a big difference in Madigan being the best in the world against these other guys. Now, I mentioned white hackle, but there's a lot of other fowl that does it, and I ain't just picking on white hackles. But what I'm saying is, you pick out your chickens on your breeding program that don't do that. You pick out your chickens that always trying to win the fight. And back when it was legal, and back when it was legal, if you'll notice, those cocks, a lot of times you'll put them in your cock box after their show, and you'll think that cock's okay. 5 minutes later, you'll come back to the cock box, that cock be passed, he'll be gone. But he didn't act like it in the pit because he was going to win that fight. That's in his DNA. You can't feed that into him. You can't carry that into him. That has to come from his genetics. That's the reason it's so important to be careful about the type of fowl that you put in your brood pens. We'll carry on. These cocks possess an incredible quality called class, and possess it in a greater degree than any other fowl that I've ever seen. All the cocking world knows that in the happy bygone days when the clarets were really something to marvel at, that they were unbeatable and unstoppable while at the height of their pristine glory. Unbeatable and unstoppable. In other words, you had to kill every feather on him, because if you didn't, he was coming to kill you. You better kill him dead. What the old timers say, you're going to kill him dead. And there's still cocks out there like that. Or there was whenever it was legal. There's just bloodlines out there. There's some bloodlines that you automatically know, if you've been around those bloodlines and watched them compete, you know when you meet those guys, you're going to kill that rooster. You ain't going to beat him to death. You ain't going to count him out with him looking at you. You're going to kill that rooster. And that's what he's talking about. And it's so important to have those genetics in your brood pen if any way possible. If I didn't have but one cock and one hen on my yard, that'd be a game. Because without the want to, nothing else matters. It really don't. As they contained an abundance of courage, strength, and vitality, and by their conduct, when cut to the water's edge, and when the Grim Reaper was hovering near, when cut to the water's edge, I mean when he's fixing to die, would rise from the pit floor at the edge of their graves, and by the power of their dying blows kill the cock in their tracks, so dead that there was no slight tremor to mark their passing. Bam. Just what I just talked about. That's what he loved the most about them. That was their best trait. What some of my mentors said, they refused to lose. I'm not going to brag on any of my chickens, and I'm not going to call no specific family out. But the people who know me and know me well, my family members that's probably watching some of this, they know the bloodlines I'm talking about. And they know how many times I've opened them carrying cases up back when it was legal. I went back to that cock house, and that rooster seemed to be kind of fine. He seemed like he's going to be okay whenever I put him in there and cleaned him up. 5 minutes later, he was in heaven. But he was still hitting like a mule in there, and he took that other one with him. He made sure that other one went to heaven before he did. You look for those traits in your fowl. If you'll look for those traits in your fowl, you'll have better fowl. You won't win them all, nobody does. But nobody wins them all in the first pitting neither. Or they don't even get close. Most of the fights, when you win contests, when we were fighting contests back in the legal days, most of those derbies that I've won, I've never had, I can't remember a derby that I won that I didn't have at least one tough fight. One really tough fight that if that rooster hadn't fought out of his heart to win, I would not have got in the winner's circle. I would not have took that trophy home with me. So you can talk about all the ones that won in the first pit and all you wanted to, but the one I remember in my heart is that one that went over and got it done out of his heart. That's the way I see it. That's the way Gus Fischtoff said it too. That's the way Madigan and all them guys said it. That's what made them different from everybody else. I can preach it till the cows come home, but it don't matter. You can breed cut into a game rooster, but you can't breed gameness into a rooster. If he don't want to, brother, he ain't going over there. He don't care if folks looking at him. He'll say, I'm going to stand right here. Get counted out. We'll carry on. My fowl are not to be confused with any other Madigan fowl appearing on the market. Everything here is single mated and raised by me personally and from long lines of winners. There is no substitute for quality, and there is no substitute for my fowl. Man's proud of his chickens. He's proud of the way he's carried them on. It don't get no better than that. We're going to leave it right here. We're going to leave it right here. We got one more reading out of this. This is really fixing to get interesting. It's amazing how wonderful a sport is that you can think about. This was 35. You know, from 1909 to 35, his readings, his journals. And in 2009, it still took the same type file to be considered. This sport, people say, if you don't change, you're going to get lost. They're full of shit. It still takes a badass cutting rooster. It still takes dead game fowl to make bloodlines, to make up bloodlines that will last through the duration of time. Because those strong genetics is what's going to be able to hold up to the inbreeding and the line breeding and everything else. Those same qualities. And they're not on every corner. They're not at every game farm. You're only going to find them where you find them. And where you find them is irrelevant. What I mean is, whether you paid $10 million for one ass feather out of them, or you got the cock and hen at a flea market for $5 each. Chickens don't know what you paid for them, and they don't care. Good chickens are where you find them. These guys, the best in the world, and they're the ancestors to our chickens. And in the next reading, we're going to get into a lot of the guys that Gus fought mains against. And it'll be the last reading on Madigan. And it's real interesting. Real interesting stuff. But we know what them grays are. We know what they are. Now, Gilman Gray, Mansell pile, which is the same thing they splashed them Durays with and makes them clarets. And we know they got that same brown red in them made up at Duray fowl, except the mama hen was a half of that brown red and half of that Eastland. They took the daughter out of her, bred that gray claret cock, and then they took their offspring and they went back to a 3/4 Mansell pile and a 1/4 of the Gilman gray cock, and that's what made the regular grays. Some of them come black colored. The reason they got the name regular gray because they're referring to the typical gray color. But like I said, we have one more reading on this. We'll finish this up on the next reading. Real interesting stuff. No, it opened a lot of eyes the way these grays were bred. Tip of the day. Figure out how to take your eyes in your hands and tell the health of your fowl. Take good care of your fowl. Use a quality feed. That is so important. Keep a quality feed to them. Keep plenty of grit to them so they can digest that quality feed. Use quality wormers. Just take care of them and use common sense. He'll tell you what he needs if he needs anything. Just by you looking and you feeling of him if you need to. But if his eyes are puffy underneath, swole up, nice pretty red head, he don't need nothing. You just keep on doing what you're doing. Keeping up your maintenance program, quality feed, quality water, good worming program. You see his face go flattening out, you start to see the bones in his face, and you better get some attention to that rooster. There's something going on with him. Just use quality feed, good water, good worm program, take care of your chickens. And use common sense, your eyes and your hands. It's the tip of the day. God bless you guys. Hope everybody has a good weekend. Hope everybody enjoyed this reading. But like I said, we got one more, and I'm going to get it in early sometime during the week, this coming week. And hope y'all enjoyed these Madigan grays, these regular grays, not the Madigan, the regular grays. Because Madigan had several lines of grays, I'm sure. But these are the regular grays that we're discussing this time. God bless and good night.